Say welcome to everyone. This is our 440 Gallery Artist Talk. Today we're talking about Janet Pedersen's solo show 310 Union Station and Spaces and Places, our group show in the project space with Joy Makon, Catherine Orrok, and Susan Greenstein. And I just want to remind everyone that we're going to take questions at the end. I'll be asking all the artists questions. If you think of a question that you want to ask, you can put it in the chat, or you can hold it until we've asked all our questions. Um, and I also want to remind you, if you're not speaking, you could also unmute and ask your questions at that point. But if you're not speaking, then try to remember to stay muted because sometimes we get a little feedback. So let's take a look at some installation shots for Janet's beautiful show, 310 to Union Station. There's Janet unveiling. And Janet might want to orient us a little bit. Did you want
Oh,
to say something about
sure.
these?
Absolutely. So as we go around the room, that this is a triptych, even though the middle one is solo in the show. The other two are in the flat files. These are larger works on paper using flash and some mark making, and these are a little smaller. These are also on paper. Much of the work is on paper, and I'm working, so these are framed and under glass. And I'm using flash, which is that vinyl paint, which dries pretty fast. And I really have enjoyed working in flash, actually.
Well, Janet, congratulations. What a beautiful and sumptuous show this is. And before we get into the details, could you please tell us about the concept behind the show?
Sure. So I traveled to California this past January, and I was visiting with my folks, and I decided to take a train from Santa Barbara to Union Station, Los Angeles. And it was kind of a last minute decision, actually, and got onto a train which left around 3:10, but perhaps that was a little later, actually. And was just really struck by the scenery that was passing me by, and so much so that I got up out of my chair and I stood on the platform, where the door was, and I just thought pretty much the whole train ride, which is around 2 hours, I was just shooting in cinematic style, frame after frame of these scenes that were passing by. These are agricultural towns, they're industrial towns. It's not a huge amount of mileage that I was going, but that the train was going, but I just got all this footage and of scenes that were alongside the train tracks. And I didn't really know until coming back to Brooklyn that I had probably a year's worth of work that I could explore with these images.
Thank you. Well, your work looks so consistently fresh and spontaneous. Can you tell us about your painting process for these pieces?
Sure. So I'm suggesting movement with my paint. I'm suggesting, like in this particular piece, this is called Milford Industrial. And by the way, all of the titles are the actual from the frame that I had taken that these paintings are based upon. I am titling them their actual places. So I felt that was sort of important for me, I guess. And I'm working out a lot of gestural and broad strokes and movement. This one, this particular landscape, the whole bottom, edge is pretty much suggesting the graffiti and the train tracks and jumble of just debris, and which made the sky and the architecture feels kind of sweeter almost. The light that was hitting the buildings in a certain way, but I didn't want to just stop with the image that I was working from. I did want to suggest a little bit more, perhaps memory that, you know, certain or graffiti or, you know, whatever caught my, whatever, you know, makes these landscapes so interesting to me with, you know, telephone poles and palm trees and this, this structure on the one to the right there. And or this one, even just mark making with the within the sky. I ended up just playing a lot with gesture and shape and yeah, pretty much what I wanted to kind of hold on to, because this is a series that um, uh, uh, had these landscapes that, you know, probably could on some level be pretty drab to one person, or but with the certain light that was involved here, I felt that they were really beautiful.
Yes, and that kind of leads me to my next question. So, um, that you mentioned memory, and you mentioned the light. So they each of these pieces has a particular look that that makes them the series. And I wonder, like, what parts are factual and what parts are fanciful. I know you talked about the debris, um, but then they look like you could have just sat down and done this exactly from the scene. But then if that was true, these, you know, kind of um, alternative landscapes wouldn't look as amazing as they do.
Right. I
So
am abstracting from the images a lot, actually. At a certain point, I probably could have put some of the image, you know, the photographs, just to, you know, to show you that at a certain point you do let that photograph go and pull out different shapes or feelings of light or gesture that starts to become interesting to my eye and work as, you know, a group of paintings. Even here, I'm kind of poking at the material and scratching back into it, kind of childlike or naive, I guess. Um, uh, in my artist statement, I do recollect that my train rides going to visit my grandmother as a child, which probably only happened once, but it was a strong memory where I took a train trip by myself at a pretty young age to visit my grandmother, and I just, you know, that was something, and I had to confirm it with my mom, and she says, yeah, you actually did that, and we picked you up later. And I guess to some degree, but not, you know, I'm using memory a lot, and memory of my childhood, perhaps the light, California light. I am a, you know, I'm from Los Angeles area, and there is a particular light and smell, the smog. There's a particular coloring that happens with these agricultural towns, the mountains, the kind of the dry, pretty dry landscape, which was, I was also struck by this time because of, you know, climate change and everything. And I suppose that I'm infusing a little bit of my memories from way back when, but also more immediately, you know, using an image to work by, and then putting it away, and then having that as my memory to come back to my painting and develop with a sense of, what did I remember when I was so struck by that memory, of just that fleeting memory, and how can I infuse that into each painting, which became really important for me to just kind of grasp, more than anything, the feeling of what it was that made me want to get out of my chair and take all these photos in the first place. Um, I mean, dictating it all is that California light. And at this particular time of day, which they do call the golden hours,
Mhm.
I tried to, that was sort of my guiding force throughout all of these, that light, and you know, that if you can stand in the gallery and get there and do a 360, you'll see that it's sort of a constant pattern.
And it's very beautiful. And something we talked
Thank
about
you.
earlier is that they have this stillness of like a studied specific place, but at the same time they have the feeling of movement, like you just dashed past it, which obviously, if you're on the train, you did. But uh, so if you disregard the references and the narrative and just consider the abstraction, I think it's amazing how your compositions kind of echo that they're casual and carefully considered, like simultaneously. And the more I look at it, the more I find these amazing things that seem like you're calling naive, and I'm thinking of them as fluid or casual um, or just very sure-handed, and
Mhm.
but at the same time they're very considered. So can you talk about like your ideas of composition?
Sure. Uh, so composition wise, well, first of all, I took a lot of these paintings and I had them up on a wall during the summer. So I was working in tandem with all of these. I was like using maybe some mark making from one of them and using it into another. The sort of the cross hatch was suggestive of the chain link fences that I saw. Um, this one, the bottom half, that was totally made up because I just felt like this painting began to speak to me. There was a granary involved in this one, which didn't work. And so it made more sense for me to take it out. And so this is what I mean by abstracting. My letting a lot of things go or painting over them or bringing them back. It was just a lot of back and forth with a lot of these compositions. And but then at a certain point, when I look at all of the works as a whole, I wanted to unify them. And again, I speak to the light that really pretty much unifies most of them. The A-frame shapes, like in this one, that became just sort of the theme in this particular piece. And you see it in the other one called Passing Houses, because the, you know, California house, the bungalow houses, they have that A-frame quality, which that's just that is so indicative of the California architecture. Uh, However, this was a granary, this particular image right here. Working very loosely, not caring so much if anything was exact. I liked the fact that things were so loose and almost done in a way that was crude or childlike. That to me felt like movement and
Um,
and um, maybe a nod to my childhood drawings. Who knows? But
well,
yeah,
you had to be a very skilled child, that's all I can say. So, Susan, could we move to the one of the railroad crossing? Do you know which one I mean? Uh, this one, yeah. So, because they're so unified and because they have this quality of I don't know, movement, it might be easy to breeze past the details. But if you sink into this and just look at the details, they're so charming. And I wondered if you could talk about specifically about your use of pencil.
Sure. So for the works on paper, I have to remember that these did begin with a really loose drawing underneath on the paper, which I can cover with a clear gesso and then work on top of that. And whether we actually see that original pencil or not, in this one, I don't think you can. Maybe a little bit to the right, maybe that the crossing, you know, the cross right there. Uh, But the pencil, which I end up or etching into or using directly at the very end is my final mark making, which if I screw that up, then on some levels I could sort of the painting, I've screwed up the painting. So I just felt like I just like to challenge myself. I like to scare myself a little bit when I paint too. Just what's going to happen if I just do this and surprise myself, not scare myself, but surprise myself. I am pretty process oriented. I love process in painting. To me, that's really exciting. And so I think that these paintings, doing this particular group of paintings, called upon me to do that, and I loved it. I love the challenge. So
And so successfully.
thank you.
And this is a surprise question. I didn't ask you this before, but I'd like to ask, where is this leading? Do you feel like more series are in your future?
I'm thinking about a new series. I'm thinking about one, but with a more vertical format. So
Oh,
I don't know. I'm back in New York. I love New York. I love the city. So I'm starting to think about something right now, but that can change on a dime. That's for me. And I don't know if it's going to be a series or not, but I've just really enjoyed painting plein air. I know, so Susan and I have gone out a lot this summer, and that's been highly enjoyable to keep learning from the light. That's what it's all about.
beautiful. Thank you so much, Janet.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now we're going to move on to spaces and places. And let's take a look at those installation shots. And here we're seeing side by side Catherine Orrok, Joy Makon, and then that's more Joy. And then you can also see Susan Greenstein's. There's all three of them together. And we're going to begin with Catherine. Catherine, congratulations on your first show at 440 Gallery. When I look at these lovely abstract pieces, I get engrossed with the ins and outs of the composition. Can you please tell us about your intention?
Sure. Also, thank you very much for the wonderful welcome to the gallery. I'm so pleased to be showing at 440 with such a great group of people. So thank you for that. So these paintings, when I first started painting quite a while ago, the word was that painting was dead. And, that was the kind of the gist of Clement Greenberg's statements. Everybody thought, okay, it's going to be about the picture plane, paint, flat. And if you take that to its logical conclusion, then yeah, I guess maybe you could say, well, where else are we going to go with painting? But I never believed that the process that art is that linear. Art making, the process, art history is that linear. There's so many things that happen in so many different ways. So I love paint. I I also like using the grid. So the grid was, that's kind of the underlying structure to, modernist thinking, painting. But what I want to do, I think about that, but then what I want to do is compromise that grid with the process of painting and my intuition and then my desire to take that very obvious two-dimensional surface and use pigment to bend it, to make it warp in some kind of way, so that what you have to do is look at these and then it's about looking, it's about your perception, it's about how your eye will take this information and then do something different with it. But at the same time, I want it completely recognizable that this is paint on a two-dimensional surface.
Well, these paintings are alive and well. Uh, and in these pieces, I see variation in the way the colors applied. And I wonder if you could share some insight about how you approach color and surface.
Sure. Yeah, so color, of course, is very important to me. It's one of the primary ways that I use to kind of bend the space, because colors have different properties, you know. Your blues will recede, your warm colors will pop out. Where you put them, how you align them next to each other, they have different effects. Um, and and then the application of the paint, of course, you can see, like in this one, there's layers, like a veiled layer over an undercoat. So the brushwork of the top coat is prominent, but underneath there's something else happening. So again, it's like creating another kind of space. It's a very shallow space, but it's intimating there's things going on behind the surface.
Nice, yes, thank you. Um, these pieces are each special and unique. And I also find myself thinking of different associations. Can you talk about your influences?
Sure, yeah. Well, early on, I was bowled over by a painting in the Museum of Modern Art, Matisse's Red Studio, which when I first saw that as a kid, it was kind of mind-boggling that somebody could do this with space space on the canvas. It was just something like I'd never seen something like this before, even though this is, of course, many people have had this experience with this painting. Many modernists were thunderstruck by it. So it's a powerful painting. And I would also, I don't know how many people got a chance to see the show at the Modern, which they had the Red Studio, and then they brought in all the paintings that were that were in the studio, and it was really a marvelous show. In fact, there was a quote about it, reading about it, that it was amazing that he took representational space and turned it into a picture plane by painting that Venetian red over this, you know, basically covering what was underneath it with this Venetian red. And that was what was so astounding. So space. So let's see. Okay, color. So wait. Oh, influences. Yeah. Also, people who use, I mean, you know, think about the grid, and it's been used in so many different ways, so many disparate ways. And you think Agnes Martin with her very kind of regimented, extraordinarily beautiful paintings. And then you think about Stanley Whitney with these dynamic, there's so much movement in these paintings. I just love that here is this very basic thing, and we can continue to use it and go in all kinds of different directions with it. I mentioned earlier when we were chatting about the show at Karma Gallery, which is painting in the 70s and 80s, the time when painting was declared dead. But there's all these fantastic paintings in this show, and I think it's still up, and I recommend people go and see it. They're all women, as it turns out, although that's not what that just happened to be the paintings that were shown. So in that show is Mary Heilman, Martha Diamond, let me see who else. Just, you know, so many great paintings. The use of paint, putting it down it's just inspiring. So yeah, I look to lots of people. So it doesn't have to be only abstract work. I mean, I love Philip Guston, and the way he can just put down paint is so admirable. Oh, and I forgot one. Yes, also important. Not painters, the G's Bend quilters, who I was flabbergasted by a show at the Whitney a few years ago. Gorgeous.
Was
They're like
I.
abstract paintings, and think about so how structured a quilt. You think quilting, it's patterns and repetition, and you see these. They just sing because they are so free, liberated from the rigidity, and just pure joy. Yeah,
And I see your connection.
yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Catherine.
Oh, you're welcome.
And now it's time to move on to Joy Makon. So let's take a look at her pieces. Joy, these pieces are so beautiful, and they seem to be a bit of a departure for you. Can you talk about what's different with these pieces?
What's different on these pieces is that they're painted interiors, and I rarely put people in a interior space. I do a lot of figures in landscapes and outdoors. So I think these were different for me for that reason.
Uh, yeah, do you want to talk about the specific interior that you chose here?
Sure. I went to see this wonderful show at the Guggenheim, the Hilma F. Klint show. And it's a large show. It took up the whole ramp of the Guggenheim. And somewhere along the way, inspiration struck me in that I saw beautiful light, which is important in my paintings, in the Guggenheim, in this very white, open, minimal space. And the people started to become more interesting to me. They were really very fascinating. There was a story behind them. So I had both beautiful light. I had a sense of space, which is very important to me also. I like to put space in my paintings so that the viewer can walk through the painting and really get a sense of front and back and everything in between, a three-dimensional feel. And in New York, everybody wears black or they wear dark clothes. So I had a lot of overlapping bodies that were forming really interesting shapes against this very minimal background. And it was very fascinating. And I ended up taking tons of photographs that day and going back to my studio and really looking at some of these subjects. This was the first one I painted. And it really just became a very interesting series from the day. And I loved that I could also portray the movement and all of the different peripheral visions that one gets when you're looking at crowds. And I really I challenged myself with these to bring that into the series. But I also fell in love with the people. I thought they were pretty wonderful.
Yeah, I love how you've contrasted the hard edges and the shiny surfaces with the
Mhm.
soft and textured feeling of the clothing
It becomes very
and body.
abstract for me. The shiny floor becomes part of an abstraction of the shapes that the people were making. So it was all kind of a very interesting challenge I gave to myself with these.
Yeah, and I noticed your composition is well thought out, and the darks and lights are balanced in an interesting way. Can you speak about your approach to composition?
It's very important for me. One of the things that I work on is I do work out the composition way before I even begin painting. And I do that through the photographs that I take, and I do that on my computer. And it's a pretty defined space by the time I go to paint. I know when, in this case, in this case where a body is cut off, or the edge of a painting. It's all very deliberate, and it is decided at the point that I'm looking at the photographs on my computer and working it out at that stage. So it's very tightly composed by the time I go to paint. That's been figured out.
Very effective. And Joy, what's next to you? What's next for you? Sorry. Or can we expect to see more work in this vein? Are you going to do more interiors?
Well, I actually have a fourth one that's part of this series. I'll put it up in the chat room and you'll be able to go to my website and see it. I'm always on the lookout for this kind of thing. And it's very serendipity. It has a lot of serendipity to it where I can't really predict it. I went to the Whitney for the Jasper Johns show with the intention of finding this kind of thing there. And I probably took quite a few hundred pictures and I came back to the studio and there wasn't a single one that I really wanted to paint. So I can't predict that. And when it happens, it's a great thing. And I'm always looking for it. I look for it out in the park when I'm walking around, when I go somewhere. I'm always looking for it on the beach. And when it happens, it hits me over the head for the time being. And some of it is because of the past few years with COVID. I've stopped going into places with a lot of crowds. So I'm not seeing the kinds of groupings of people that I might necessarily want. And I'm sticking more with still life right now or landscape. But I'm always looking. So I hope to find it again.
Well, we look forward to the next thing that you choose.
Great.
Thank you, Joy. So now, last but not least, Susan Greenstein. Let's take a look at her work. So Susan, your work here is so joyful. I notice that the surface tends to be packed with objects, yet there's still a sense of light and air. And the work never seems to feel dense or overworked. What is your secret?
Well, I don't know if it's so much of a secret, but I do tend to love to paint my paintings, and I think it's just the excitement that I feel between different surfaces and different rhythms that different objects will bring together. Or if I'm working, like say for instance in the, whoops, wrong one. Just how the rhythm of different leaves and what's behind it and other surfaces, how they kind of weave together. So that's always important to me. And I work some people call it direct painting. I don't draw out what I'm doing first. It's become as I've been working in watercolors, it's just become more important for me to be very immediate. That's what excites me, So so the strokes and my goal is to have the strokes say more, less strokes and more within each stroke. So that's kind of a goal that I always have, and so I think that might be one of the reasons why the work stays kind of immediate and fresh, for me.
Beautiful. And so interesting to see the contrast of two watercolorists, both magical, but both opposite approaches. Interesting.
Yes, and for me, it's so fascinating to see Joy's work and to see this other really amazing way of using watercolors. It's true, we work sort of at two different ends of the spectrum, but I learn so much from seeing what Joy is doing always on a regular basis. So that's exciting.
So Susan, I love the palette in these pieces. I'm not sure if you selected these pieces because of their unity of palette, but in any case, I wonder what your thoughts are creating palette. Are you influenced more by what's in front of you, or are you tweaking it to be consistent with other pieces?
Well, I think what happens, one of the things that the reason I chose these four paintings was because I've just recently retired from my day job, and so it almost felt like I was reclaiming my home, like reclaiming my immediate environment. So two of these paintings are in my backyard, and they're things that are very close to home, and so um, I would see this on a regular basis, this view, and it just really struck me. It's kind of like what both Janet and Joy were saying about, you'll just see something in it and it just, it needs to be painted, or it just really inspires you. But once I start to first, the colors are about observation, but once I have some of the colors, it really becomes the relationship between the colors within the painting. So um, at one point, it's really not so much about the palette is not so much about what I'm seeing. It just becomes the conversation between the colors within the painting.
Thank you. That makes sense. And then uh, maybe just a little more elaboration on this process. You already talked about how your work is, um, but I'm interested in the use of white. How your pieces are kind of sparkling with this energy, and it's partly this white that shows through. Um, uh, can you talk about that? How that plays into your work?
I think that maybe that comes from, well, the light is always a very important consideration in the paintings, and that's usually what I'm drawn to when I find something that I'm interested in painting. And I think the fact that it's a very immediate process and it's very direct. Um, it gives me a chance to sort of leave these sparkles as I go. I consider leaving spaces, and that just helps me with movement within the paintings.
Well, it's a wonderful balance of abundance and restraint to be able to do that, I think. So kudos to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. So now it's time to move to the chat. I see we've got some questions. Yeah, everything okay?
Yeah, my cat just jumped on the computer, but we're fine.
Um,
Oops. Let me just stop share. Okay.
so I believe this is back for Janet. Catherine AC says, "You love the challenge and I love the result. Congrats on an amazing show."
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine.
And Peter Darnell says, I feel like giving every one of the paintings we're seeing by all three artists today a giant round of applause. They're all really beautiful in their own way."
I
Oh,
corrected that
agree.
and said four later on because
Okay, yeah,
I
I was
said
just
it
gonna,
when we were only up to Janet's, but really they're really beautiful. So
oh.
thank you.
second that. Then 440 Galleries, I think this is Joy, right? The fourth painting in this series from MoMA, a fourth painting. Oh, so she has put a link to the fourth painting in her series of interiors with figures. So you all can check it out. Catherine says, "I agree, Peter." Peter says, "Four artists." Janet says, "Susan, I love how you keep structures in that perhaps another artist would leave out, tools and gadgets, etc."
Everyday items.
Thank you.
Yeah, is that a specific intention, Susan?
Yeah, it's sometimes I don't know, I almost find it a way of sort of grounding me within the painting, like just bringing some things that are um, that might be surprises within the paintings, I like to bring that into it sometimes, and some everyday aspects into the work.
It's very reassuring, actually.
Thank you.
Life in all its minutia. I love it.
Thanks.
I have a question for Janet, if I may.
Sure.
As I've declared on Facebook probably a dozen times already about how much I love your work, so I do, seeing it here today. And so my question, I guess, is how much you feel attached to the modernist tradition, and you have to have thought of Diebenkorn, because I think of Diebenkorn. I didn't even know that you were in California, when you painted these. I just looked at them and loved them and thought of Diebenkorn. So I guess that was a question and a statement. So
Well, okay. So Diebenkorn, I'm not gonna lie, he's the source of great inspiration for me. His sense of color and the way he organizes his canvases, and he does the figure, he does landscapes, and how he approaches those. Of course, I love his work, but I don't stop there. I mean, there's so many. It's hard for me to come up with with a list of who I really am inspired by. I'm inspired by so much, and I am inspired by my contemporaries here, even people I'm seeing online, Instagram. And but when it comes to the Bay Area figuratives, I don't want to stop there and say that's, I don't want to, but I will say that there's a special place in my heart for those painters, because they were doing amazing things during a highly, abstract, they were bringing it back to the figure. And it's I love painting the figure. I teach that, and so it's sort of really close to me. And Diebenkorn just does it so well, but not only him, but all of the Bay Areas, and I'm impressed to think of their names, my God.
So do you feel like connected to the modernist tradition? Because there's a lot of really cool figure ground stuff that's happening. That's, to me, I love it. So I'm just wondering how you felt about that, or you just love the way it looks, and that's good enough, certainly. But just wondering, if how or if that kind of thing registers.
To the mod, and can you just be more specific to?
Well, like just the whole idea of I think, I think it was kind of how playing with the picture plane, I guess, is what I'm talking about. And I think that's what I mean about the modernist tradition, and how I think that as Greenberg said, that painting was an end because it was coming to an end because playing with the picture plane, like Ad Reinhardt was the last person who could do that. So I guess, and for painting to still have some meaning, I think that's what modernism is. That's what I studied it to be about. So I'm just wondering if how that idea of figure ground registers when you're painting, as a way of thinking of whether it's complete or not, or if it registers at all.
It's such a great question. I wish I had a deep answer. I don't. I'm interested in process. I'm interested in always looking at art and seeing, why does a person, I mean, I'd love to go see Hopper, but I really want to go see Martha Diamond, because I don't know her work.
That answer is better than, that's the best answer, really. I mean, it doesn't have to be, that's a great answer.
Well, it's and you and I have taken figure drawing classes, remember at Invisible Dog. I don't know, remember Mari, you and I?
Yes.
And that's kind of abstraction too, just going in there with our drawing and trying to make this figure happen on paper within a certain amount of time, and constantly, keeping our chops sharpened, for whatever reason. I mean, or going out to paint plein air, which is what I love to do, but I don't ever stop looking at art. My husband and I, we go out all the time and go to galleries and museums, and saw the amazing Matisse show. That was great. Really looking forward to Oppenheim. I don't know if I'm even saying her last name correctly, but I've only known that she did like the fur cup and teaspoon, but she did amazing other pretty abstract work. So I'm really excited to see what those works will, what else she has done. So
Um,
sorry.
Janet, I just to elaborate on what Peter was saying, I think what as a plein air painter, where sometimes that's associated with kind of sticking with the subject that's in front of you, and what we talked about earlier, how you make it into an abstraction, which is something that Diebenkorn did, that's playing with the figure ground in a way that that you do so apparently effortlessly, like it's not labored, and it's not fussed over. You're just doing it, like you're observing and you're abstracting simultaneously, which is almost a contradiction, which I find really interesting.
That could be intuitive with me, and it's certainly also more recent, because as an illustrator, my background is in illustration, and it's been very real, a lot of realism. But then when I started doing children's books, I had to abstract. I had to make characters that didn't exist, or locations that were fanciful or whatever. I think that was a step away for me. But I abstracting with my own work has been kind of a lesson in seeing or not seeing, and editing back and forth. So
Well, thanks,
Yeah.
Janet. I see Catherine Orrok
Yeah.
has a raised hand.
I
And
do.
then
Yeah.
Joanne.
I wanted to ask you if I would, or recommend, I haven't seen it yet, but I am dying to see the Alex Katz show at the Guggenheim, which I think is, talk about, brevity and putting that paint down, and some of his, in figure ground, some of
Yeah.
his paintings, and they're so large scale too, it's amazing.
Yeah.
The trees where the sky actually, it's sky seeing through the trees, and yet you're seeing like these blue shapes that go back and forth between
Yeah.
being the sky, or are they in front of the tree? I mean, I'm very excited to see this show. And
Same here.
another plein air painter who I adore is Lois Dodd, who talk about, putting it down with such, there's a delicacy, but such a surety, and just the most beautiful paintings.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And her Elizabeth O'Reilly is another artist that I really I love her work. They both abstract in a way that, I mean, it really feels like they abstract and extract a sense of place beautifully, and with an abstract feeling to it. The Katz, I never cared for his work, but I love his later works. I
was for the portraits and things, although I recognize, they're very important in the great scheme of things, what he was doing, and he stuck to his thing, but the landscapes are what really knock me out.
Yeah. I think we should all go see Alex Katz up at the Guggenheim. Is it the Guggenheim? Yeah, that would be fun.
He's there now?
Yeah, it just opened.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And Joy, you have to maybe take your camera with you and perhaps have some things make themselves seen.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, you can. Phil wants to say something.
I wanted to say to Janet that, I recently found out that you really love film
Yes.
and that these paintings are so cinematic.
Yeah, they
And did you think about that at all when you painted them?
Um, Boy, I love that question because I love my only frame of reference for film other than the title of that Western 310 to Yuma. That was a little bit of a joke.
I got that.
But also the way I was shooting the imagery, because I do have a little bit of a film background. I studied it, and I love film, and I love the montage, images next to each other. And so when I was shooting all these images, I kind of felt like picking out the ones that said the story, editing them down. It
Right.
felt a little cinematic to me. Certainly shooting them felt cinematic to me because they are in succession. And the tropic or the triptych, when you put those three together, it has a feeling of, advancement. That
Right,
feels a
right.
little cinematic to me too.
Right. I thought what Karen said was so interesting. Like each one is still but moving at the same time, because you're on the train, so there's that element of motion, but they're also still like almost as if it's a camera still,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to keep painting these on some level, but give it a break too, and I don't know, another location perhaps, but yeah.
I know Joanne wanted to ask a question.
Well, actually, I was just going to make a comment that it seemed to me that in this particular time at the 440 Gallery, it's 4 women. They're all painters. 3 of them are watercolorists. Janet, I mean, you're working with a water medium most of the time. And each one has its own uniqueness. And I think that the reason for that is because we have 4 individuals who, not only if they're working very realistically, are working from someplace inside that's very personal, and their approaches are different. But I think that's the wonderful thing about art and making it personal. But it's the first time, I think, in a long time that I've seen the 440 have 4 painters. Sometimes they're mix and match, but it just struck me the few times I've been in the gallery this past month to see 4 painters whose work I love, and to see how personal and different their direction and their process is. That was great.
I was excited about this show, and after it was hung, there's figures, there's abstracts, and there's landscapes in 2 different approaches to landscape. It's a really nicely balanced show. So I'm just echoing what you said, Joanne. And
one more thing is, I was lucky enough to visit Janet while she was working on some of these paintings. And the triptych, I must say, Janet, the show is fantastic.
All because of you.
Truly disappointed that the 3 were not together, because to me, that when I saw what you were going through developing those and making changes, it was very intriguing. And then to see them in their finished state it was really nice. But in my mind, I see all 3.
I was gonna just do 2, and then Joanne said, "No, you got to put that 3rd one in and work on it a little."
And
more.
that was the middle one, the one that you hung singularly.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. That just sold, by the way.
Oh my God! Now it's separated.
I know, really.
Well, we can hope that the owner is so in love that they want to reunite.
Congratulations!
Those for
That's
her.
great. That's great.
You can decide later.
Oh, and Peter, could you hold Ani up one more time and get a real good picture of Ani? Your granddaughter. She was in the picture for a while there, Karen.
I'm afraid she ran away.
I'm sorry, my internet is unstable.
Not the same.
Good Dolly.
She's beautiful.
But Do we have any other questions?
Thanks so much, Karen, for your
Crazy.
great questions, really, always.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Oh, you're
great.
welcome. This has been a pleasure. Before we leave, I want to mention that the next show is the 18th annual Small Work Show, and it's going to be up from November 17th to December 16th. And oh, and you can see Joy is giving us the details there on the screen. And Susan Greenstein and Janet Pedersen and myself each have work in
And
this.
and me too, me too.
Oh, and Joanne. Acey. And Ellen, do you have a piece in there? No. Well, there's going to be 80 works in the Small Work Show, so it's going to be well worth seeing. And if you'd like to join us for the opening, the live opening, November 19th from 4 to 6 p.m., we'd love to see you. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you. It was
And
Thank
great.
you.
enjoy the rest
Thanks
of
so
your
much.
Sunday.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Happy
Yeah,
Halloween.
Halloween.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for coming. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.